Hey everyone, so welcome to the third and final part of SVTalks, our series on school safety. Today we'll be discussing the solutions proposed to mitigating school shootings and making our schools more safe. So we'll be looking at the pros and cons of each individual solution proposed, and that is what our episode will cover today.
So the first solution that we have proposed is about arming teachers with guns. This has been pretty big in the media. People have been talking a lot about the teachers' responsibilities and what they need to be doing in schools in case of a school shooting. So do you want to talk a little bit about your opinion on that?
Yes, so I could see the pros to this. You know, it gives classrooms a fighting chance. It almost equalizes the both sides of in a school shooting, and having a gun in a classroom would make students feel somewhat more secure for some students, but also there are a lot of it's a really complicated issue because there are a lot of things that can go wrong when you have guns in classrooms. And in my experience in my school, I feel like teachers are supposed to be in a classroom to teach, not necessarily to fight off school shooters. So for me, and in my experience, I feel like it would draw more teachers away from the profession if they were supposed to be required to handle guns, or if they were required to have guns in their classrooms, or even if it was just an option to have guns in their classrooms.
I agree with that. I think you really encapsulated that with the first sentence you said when you said that it gives teachers a fighting chance, because what that is it's giving teachers a fight. And I think the biggest issue is like these teachers aren't trained to have it. And sure, like not every teacher has to have a gun, but like we're not looking to increase the number of fights that exist in schools. We're trying to lower that, and I think that's a really big part of the issue.
And oh, sorry, you can continue.
Yeah, I just think that adding more guns into the school population isn't the solution when the issue is that students are being violent with the guns that they have. So the best way that I can see to reduce gun violence is to reduce the number of guns in the schools, and adding guns to teachers I don't think is the move.
And I'm especially afraid that if teachers have guns in their classrooms, you know, that's accessible not only to the teachers but also to the students. Students like definitely go through like teachers' things. Like there are students that will go through a teacher's closet or a teacher's desk. I've had that experience happen to me when I was in middle school, when students went through a teacher's desk. So I feel like if teachers have a gun in their classroom, that's not only accessible to the teacher but also to the students as well. So it adds a lot more danger when dealing with guns in classrooms.
Mm-hmm. And that has happened before. Like there's been instances in news and recorded where like teachers leave their gun in the bathroom or something by accident when they're washing their hands, and a kid can accidentally get their hands on that. Especially because public education starts in kindergarten, and so these kids might be like little kids and they don't really know what a gun is and what like a real gun is and the dangers of it, and they might just be like, oh look, what is this? And it doesn't make sense to have them have the option to accidentally fire a gun. These kids aren't trained, they don't know anything about these guns. I don't think it makes any sense.
No, for sure. And especially like the teacher is now put into a situation where like they have to be able to neutralize a shooter. They have to get first of all get their gun out, load ammunition, and then try to shoot down someone who also has a gun, possibly a much more powerful gun. So it really adds a lot more stress and anxiety to teachers when we're actually trying to lower that stress and anxiety. And I'm afraid that there's going to be a higher teacher shortage in Tennessee if if this possible solution is enacted.
And there's also a chance that the person who is coming into the school to shoot is another student. And so you're putting on the responsibility to these teachers to say, do you shoot one of your own students? That's not a responsibility that these teachers deserve to do. They are here to teach and educate us, not to make moral and ethical decisions.
I definitely agree with that. I feel like if I was a teacher, I would not want to. I definitely would want to be in the building just to simply teach, because right now there's already a lot on teachers' plates, organizing and scheduling certain lessons and really putting in all of that work for the students, for their lessons themselves. I feel like it would be unrealistic to expect teachers to, on top of that burden, to have another burden of having a gun in the classroom and making sure that students aren't accessing it, and then two, they know how to use it, and they can take down a shooter.
And how do you decide whether or not a teacher should be able to bring that into the school?
Yeah.
Like, is there a certain process to making sure that the student can bring it? Like, there's just too many factors in for adding more guns into the school, which doesn't make any sense.
And this isn't like this is related to having guns in classroom, but in societies that have more guns, there's a correlation between societies that have more guns and more instances where people are hurt by guns, whether by accident or by on purpose. So there's even a chance that that students are like accidentally shot during a discharge, or that students are hurt with teachers having guns while there's like a school shooting, because teachers aren't professionals. Even with training, they aren't going to be professionals. So there's a chance that students themselves would be hurt, and there's more chances of accidents happening.
I think the best thing is there's already going to be guns in schools because there's a school resource officer, an SSO. So there's already going to be a gun and a professional using that gun who knows how to use it safely, who knows how to handle it. And so the teachers themselves shouldn't be taking on the job that the SRO or the SSO has. That is their job, to protect the students with their gun or their whatever resources they have.
Yeah, and especially like when emergency services comes, like with police who have guns, who are coming into the building, how would they know who the shooter is if all of these teachers have guns, and especially if these teachers are especially if it's if the school shooting is happening during let's say like in between classes, and police arrive on the scene, how will they know like who is the shooter and who isn't? I feel like it would add more chaos to the situation. But I recognize the intentions of it. I can see why some people would think that it would decrease the likelihood of school shooters coming into the building, because when shooters are dealt with people who are armed, they usually they usually surrender, or they usually don't aggress on the police, on those who are armed. So I can see why that is a solution proposed. However, I take the stance that this would not be the best solution. This is not a solution we should aim for.
I agree with that.
So the next proposed solution that is being looked at are red flag laws, and Governor Lee called for state lawmakers to pass these red flag laws, and they're basically laws that allow authorities to remove guns from people who might pose a harm to themselves or to others. So that's a general overview of what these laws are.
I'm a fan of these laws, and I think most people are. It has a lot of strong bipartisan support. But I think the best case scenario is that you don't ever need to use this law, that people aren't going to be a danger to themselves or to others in school settings especially. But I think it's a really good way of reacting to the situation, because when someone has come in and they do have a gun, like you need to make sure that they don't have the gun so that they can't be violent towards the student body. So I think it's a really good way of reacting to the situation, although I think that the core part of school shootings is that we need to prevent them from even happening in the first place.
And some of the arguments that I've seen that are against these laws are that it like violates Second Amendment rights, and that it also violates 11th Amendment rights with being like having to prove that you're innocent, and like it's basically sort of pre-crime. Some of the other points of opposition that I looked at is that there's no statistics for it reducing crime or homicides, but personally, I'm still a big fan of these laws. I feel like especially when you're recognizing red flags and you're recognizing those who might pose a danger to themselves, it not only saves other people's lives, but it also saves the person who's handling the gun their life. I believe that like it would especially benefit like our community, and it's certainly, like you said, a reactive law. It's not being proactive, but I feel like this, in addition to some other laws, would definitely make a big impact.
I agree with that. I mean, like, I get the concern about like the fact that you don't want people to just have guns taken away from them when they have the right to have them. But if I was in the setting where I was being threatened with a gun, or if I saw someone threatening themselves with a gun or anything like that, like I would want law enforcement or like first responders to be able to remove that gun from the situation, at least temporarily, so that they can, you know, de-escalate the situation. Because the first step to removing the danger from the situation is the weapon, the gun that they would have.
And that's a big thing temporarily. You know, when people look at gun laws, that they're looking at it through a lens where they're like, oh, this is going to be permanent. You're going to be taking away my guns forever. But I feel like Second Amendment wouldn't apply to the situation, because it's a temporary. It's going to be temporary. It's not holding your gun forever, or like saying that person can't have guns anymore. But it's instead disarming the perpetrator. It's simply in order to make sure they aren't a threat to others or themselves at that moment until they seek better help or they get better.
And I think most people in this situation, like parents, teachers, students, like faculty in schools, would want for the law enforcement to be able to take that away for the time being, because I think it's important that safety comes first when we're in schools. Guns aren't normally allowed in schools. If you have a gun, usually, like if a kid brings in a gun, like someone will take it away. And like a school setting isn't the place where you need to be using a gun, and it shouldn't be. And so I think that it just makes sense that when we're in these, especially for these specific situations, that we have red flag laws in place.
And I think it's definitely especially important to recognize when guns aren't allowed in schools. Like, nobody is calling out and saying, oh, these are that this is violating my Second Amendment rights, or at least there's a very small minority of people who is saying that. So I think it's also especially important to note that, and I think the same principle applies to these red flag laws.
And I think that's really important to recognize, because red flag laws aren't about taking away guns from people who are just on the street and they're allowed to have guns. They have the proper training, the certification, they have whatever they need to be allowed to use guns safely. Like, I think there's a big separation between that. Red flag laws are only used when there is a red flag. They're not just used randomly because people want to do that.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to our final episode of our school safety series on SVTalks. We're really glad that you stopped by and watched our episodes. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, you can do so on YouTube and Spotify, and we'll see you next month.
And make sure to follow us on Instagram at UnifyEdHC